We just like we live.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, that we're live. I'll
Is this like angle fine?
However you like, I'm easy. Yes, it's great. It's awesome.
Perfect. All right, just for Chris, a quick introduction of Chris. So Chris Urmson is CEO, chairman, and co-founder of Aurora. Is widely regarded as one of the earliest pioneers and leaders in the self-driving industry. So Aurora is a publicly traded company with a mission to deliver the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. And there's some swag in the back for you guys to grab at the end of the talk. But yeah, Chris has 20 years of experience leading automated vehicle programs, which started when he was director of technology for Carnegie Mellon's DARPA Grand and Urban Challenge teams. After the DARPA challenges, Chris helped found and lead Google's self-driving car program, which is now Waymo. In early 2017, he co-founded Aurora with Drew Bagnall and Sterling Anderson. He has authored over 60 patents and over 50 publications. He earned a PhD in robotics from Carnegie Mellon University and a bachelor's of engineering in computer engineering from the University of Manitoba. So yeah, if everyone can give a hand for Chris.
I feel like I should just walk out of the room now. I think that's okay. We're good. Let's call it. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
I guess the first question is how did you first enter this space of autonomous vehicles?
Yeah. So I started working in autonomous vehicles back in 2003 for the first DARPA Grand Challenge. And back then, the US government had looked at the progress that we had been making in automation for vehicles and looked at the military's mandate that they wanted a third of all ground vehicles unmanned within a decade. It didn't actually happen, but the National Academies looked and said, there's no way you're going to do that. You have to try something new. And so DARPA said, okay, we'll try this idea that had worked for things like developing navigation clocks or kind of competitions to that advance the airplane, and we'll create one for robotic ground vehicles. And we're going to make a race to drive from Los Angeles to Las Vegas across the desert. And I just thought that sounded cool. I'll be honest. Like I had been working on a project with NASA with my team, as part of a team, and we had been down in the Atacama Desert. And we were working on this robot that moved at 15 centimeters a second to 30 centimeters a second when it was really sprinting. And to put that in context, if any of you have grandparents that use a walker, that's how fast they move. And this was a chance to build a vehicle that's going to move at 50 miles an hour driving across the desert. And that's just like, that's awesome, right? And that was exciting. And the idea that this could potentially help our young men and women stay out of harm's way was kind of a nice on the side, but it's like perfectly honestly, it just sounded very cool. And then over the last 20 years, as I've had the chance to work on this, it technologically has continued to be incredible and exciting and interesting. And I've had the privilege to work with some amazing people over that time. But the impact of the work that we're doing and what it means for safety, for the US economy, for efficiency is just become more and more clear. We kind of take for granted in the US that 40,000 people are going to die every year in traffic accidents. And it's just kind of, that's the way it is. And this is a technology that can shift that. Hundreds of thousands of people are hurt in traffic accidents, traffic collisions every year. That if you look around this room, everything in here moved on a truck at some point in the way to getting here. And yet we don't have enough people who want to drive trucks because it's a dangerous job, because it's a job where you have to spend all your time away from family, because you are 10 times as likely to die in the job if you're driving a truck versus the average American. And so I feel incredibly lucky to have stumbled into this thing that sounded cool. And then, turn it into a career and do it with amazing folks, and then do something that will have a big impact in the world over time. So it's kind of been fortunate.
All right. And can you walk us through your career path, moving between Google/Waymo and then creating your own autonomous vehicle startup?
Yeah. So when I came out of high school, my thought was I would go to kind of a college in Canada, and then I'd go to a good university, graduate university, and become a professor somewhere. That sounded pretty exciting and fun. So I went to the University of Manitoba, which may be a little less illustrious, but served me well. Somebody at Carnegie Mellon made a mistake. And so I got to join there as a graduate student and did my PhD there. I spent a couple of years working for a defense contractor and decided that was not the right thing. And so I ended up getting a faculty job at Carnegie Mellon. And so I was like, oh, mission accomplished. This is what I want to do with my life. I'm good. I finally got the job. And as we completed the third of the Dartmouth Grand Challenge events, a friend of mine, Sebastian Thrun, who was a roboticist and entrepreneur, I competed with him, and he was now hired into Google to build what's now Street View. So when you open Google Maps and you go look anywhere in the world, he started the project that built that. And we had been talking, okay, we should get together and start a company to make self-driving cars. Yeah, this was 2007, and thank God we didn't, because the technology wasn't anywhere near ready. But he talked to Larry and Sergey, and they said, well, why would you do that? Why not start it here? We want to make it happen at Google. And so I ended up getting hired into Google and spent 7 years there. It started with about a half dozen of us. And I helped build the team and build the technology. And when I left, there was about 600 of us. And it was incredible, right? And the way that I made the decision to go do that was, it was hard. My wife and I had settled, we bought a house in Pittsburgh. For those of you not familiar with housing markets, costs in Pittsburgh are very much less than the costs in California. At some point, houses owning somewhere to live will matter. And we had 2 kids, and all our friends were there and were like, we'll go move out to California and we'll see how the crazy people with the Birkenstocks live for a couple of years. And that'll be that. We'll get it out of our system, come back, and I'll be on the faculty. And it's really illustrative of sometimes in life you look to make a decision and you don't really have the context. Because as I look back on it now, it should have been a no-brainer. That once we got there and saw the opportunity for me to go do the things that I really cared about, which was get this technology into a product and the resources and capabilities that I could bring to bear working at Google, it was just, like, this is the thing we should go do. How come that was such a hard decision in retrospect? And then, like all good things, after about 7 years, it was time for me to leave Google. And I really appreciated the opportunity to work with the people I did, and the company treated me incredibly well and gave me an opportunity to help found what's become the automated vehicle space, the automated vehicle industry. And so I spent a few months trying to figure out what to go do next. I was visible and high profile enough that a lot of companies heard that I left. Were like, hey, you want to come work here and lead this thing? And it was very flattering. But like many times in life, when you have a lot of choices, it's actually kind of hard because there's so much opportunity cost as you're kind of thinking through things. And I remember applying to Korea and thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to make this decision? What do I want to do? And I remember writing down in my notebook, I want to do something that matters with good people. And so that was kind of okay, this is what I'm going to go do. And for me, given the experience I had in automated vehicles, I was unique with that set of experiences. And so there was something that if I didn't use that, then it would kind of be a waste of effort. And as I'd spent time working with different companies, it became clear to me that the right way to build something new in this space, something that was going to be challenging, was to be independent. Because at the end of the day, if you're a company, you should have a purpose, right? You have a mission. And if you're a company that's run well, then when you make hard decisions, you align with the mission. And so at some point, if you're a little startup thing inside of another company and that company has a hard moment, they're going to make a rational choice, which is do the thing that they're about, not the side project. And so by being an independent company, I thought we could set the culture we want. We would have the ability to go and build the thing that we really wanted to go build in the world. And it's kind of worked out. And so for the last 7 years, geez, time flies. 28 today. Yeah, 7 years. We've been building it and it's been a hell of a rush. It's been really hard, painful at times, but it's also been incredibly rewarding. And I've been fortunate to do that with two amazing co-founders, in Drew Bagnell and Sterling Anderson, who is an MIT grad. I try not to hold that against him as Carnegie Mellon grad. You're all, included. And then just an amazing set of people, and it's very humbling to think that there's 1,800 people who are like, yeah, I want to go do that thing that those people are making. So anyway, sorry, that was a long-winded answer. I apologize.
No, that was great. I guess actually, let's like delve deeper into that. Like, what are the biggest challenges you faced when creating Aurora?
Yeah. Maybe so one of the things we tried to do, we were like, oh, we see how good companies are run. We'll write down our mission and our core values early on, so everybody knew what we were about, because we wanted to grow quickly, and we got them mostly right. So our mission has been to deliver the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. And then we had a set of values, and one of the values we had was be reasonable. And that stemmed from this idea, what's called the reasonable person principle at Carnegie Mellon, which was basically assume positive intent. That when you get an email from somebody, you can kind of read it in the mean voice, or you can read it in like the friendly voice. Try and read it in the friendly voice, because, well, A, your day will be better, and B, it's probably what they really meant. But as a company, this was kind of becoming weaponized internally. Oh, it's really important we get this done by the end of the week. Oh, that's not reasonable. I don't know if we can do that. Right? Like, oh, we can't afford to hire more people into that team right now. Well, that's not reasonable. You can't expect this. So one of the things that, to answer your question, was like getting the culture right. And so we retired Be Reasonable, because it turns out that trying to build a new company, and in our case, competing against folks like Amazon and Google and General Motors and Ford, as first a 3-person company and then a 50-person company, that is fundamentally unreasonable. Right? To think that we could go and make vehicles that drive themselves on the public roads and do that safely is unreasonable. Right? And so setting the bit on how do you think about the people, and how do we get the people to really understand what we're about, is hard, because it's in your head. But your head is not in everyone else's head, thankfully. Another example of that was we had one that was, we valued focus and digging into things. And where that went astray was that people were like, trying to figure out really esoteric things that didn't matter. Because, we had this value of focus. And so in kind of a true academic sense of let's get to the bottom of this, let's really understand it fundamentally, it turns out in a company, that's not your job. Right? The company is to understand well enough that you can get onto the next thing and kind of get the product out the door. And so that one we tweaked again to focus for impact. So I think kind of that, how do you align people? How do you get people to really understand how we want to operate, particularly as you scale? Because again, 3 people sat around a table, you can kind of get almost in each other's minds. When you get to 1,800 people, there's literally people at the company I've never met. And so how do they share the state of what we're trying to do together, and know the trade-offs, or how to make the trade-offs as they work through the work we're doing together.
Great, thank you so much. And then the next question is like, compare your time at like Google and Aurora. You were like leading both teams. So
Yeah.
do you feel like your work and like lifestyle have differed between the 2 positions?
Not a whole lot. I'm pretty competitive. Funny. So I'm relatively competitive, but I did a little personality survey thing with my leadership team, and it turned out I was not in the top quartile of competitiveness. And I was like, WTF? That stupid psychological BS, right? And I was like, okay. How does this work? And then I turned to the guy, Shondor, who leads our hardware team. And I said, this is surprising to me. And I said, do you think you're competitive? He said, yeah. He said, when you play games with your kids, do you let them win? It's like, of course. I do not. Okay. Okay, I can see that. Okay, so maybe I okay with being the second quartile. So for me, in both cases, I felt real ownership. Right, that at Google, the founders, the company had entrusted me to go make this thing happen. And it felt like a startup in that sense. And I think part of the reason why I left was I came to the realization, well, it wasn't actually, right, that while I felt a lot of ownership for it, and I had a respect for the chain of command, there were decisions that were being made broader in the organization that I didn't think were consistent with what we need to do to be successful. And at the end of the day, I couldn't reconcile the two. And so it was time for me to get out of the way. And so at Aurora, don't have that problem, right? If the thing is a disaster, I don't get to really look around the room and blame somebody else. It's kind of on me at the end of the day. And so that is real. I think one of the things that is funny is, you think like I thought what we were building at Google was a bit of a startup, but then you have to figure out how to write a paycheck to people, and how to rent a building, and how to have healthcare for folks. And there's all these things that seem like every other company does. And so how hard can this be? And they're surprisingly difficult to do right. So, I guess having to think about not just the core of the product, but actually the breadth of what it means to actually be a company. And how do we think about, like, after people have been at the company for 3 years, some of them want to get promoted. And you're like, guess we should figure that out. So there's a bunch of extra stuff where you can't lean into the infrastructure that a big company might already have to make the smaller company be successful.
I guess this is also more of a personal question, but I did like a self-driving internship this summer, and
cool.
they talked a lot about like level 5 autonomous vehicles or like completely
Yeah.
self-driving vehicles. And they were like, I don't think this is attainable, but
Yeah.
I just want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that level 5 autonomous vehicles are attainable? And did you think they were attainable when you first entered
Yeah.
this space?
Where did you intern at?
A faction, it's like really small, like
Okay.
YC startup, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it doesn't matter. Right. So for those of you, this is like inside baseball. So the SAE a few years ago came out with different levels of automation for self-driving. And like level 0 is your grandfather's Corvette, where you press a gas pedal, brake pedal, and steering wheel, and there's nothing else. And level 5 is a thing that can drive everywhere, anywhere, all the time. And level 4 is it can drive, it does all of the driving, but it can only do it certain places. And so me, I don't care about level 5. I don't need a thing that's going to drive the Appalachian Trail or, drive on sandy beaches. What I want is a thing that's going to actually provide value to people. And so I need it to be able to do all of the driving, but do it somewhere that's useful. So maybe it can only drive on the interstates, or maybe it can only drive in Boston or San Francisco or somewhere like that. And so to me, the level 5 thing doesn't matter, but I do believe and have believed for a long time that you can make a vehicle that can drive safely and efficiently without a person having to pay attention to it.
Cool. And then going back to Aurora, so looking back, is there anything you would do differently about establishing the startup beyond like, establishing the culture, and what key lessons have you learned from this process of building Aurora?
Yeah, we got a lot right. And it's one of these things like it's survivorship bias, right? It turns out if you're building a company, if you don't get it mostly right, you don't get to talk about it. And so, I think we got most of what we've done right, and we've made some big bets and it paid off. Things like being independent. We acquired a company that had some really cool LiDAR technology. We didn't let ourselves get acquired. Mostly got the culture right. I think for me, when I left Google, I didn't really realize it, but I was pretty depressed. And I kind of came to this conclusion several years into building Aurora. And that I looked at I had been successful and wealthy by any reasonable measure of it. That I had, at the time, 600 people that wanted to come and build this thing with me. And I was doing something that I was actually quite good at. And investors love what we're doing. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't understand, right? Like the the emotional part of me and the intellectual part of me were not synchronized. And I was like, that means something's broken. And so I went and got some help, and that helped me. And I remember somewhere in that phase, somebody asked me about the Jeff Bezos quote. When he retired from Amazon, he wrote a letter, and one of the things was he said in it that every day he tap danced into work. Right? He still did, right? He loved being there, and I was like, I didn't feel that way. I do now. Right? And so for me, I think it would have been better for us as a company if we had started a little bit later, and I had spent a little bit more time trying to make sure my mental state was in a good place. Because if any of you've been a part of the team or worked for someone, if the boss is kind of pissy and obnoxious on a day, then it kind of ruins it for everyone, right? And it makes people nervous. And so I think if I had been in a slightly better mental space, then we would have been more effective earlier as a company, and we'd be a little bit further along than we are today. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would do differently, is make sure like I was all the way there to start. So,
Yeah. And I guess this goes directly into work-life balance. So how
Yeah.
do you maintain a work-life balance like now? And what strategies have you
Yeah.
found helpful?
so I think the term work-life balance is damaging, at least over the short term. Right? That over somebody used this quote, and I thought it was great. In life, you can have it all. You just can't have it all at once. And so if you think about it, if you want to be an Olympic athlete, you have to give stuff up, right? If you want to be a gold medalist, you're going to have to train harder than anyone else. You're going to have to be gifted. You're going to have to do a lot of work. And telling that person that they should have a work-life balance during that process doesn't make any sense at all, right? And I think the same is true if you want to be exceptional in some way in other domains, whether it's in the political realm or in the academic realm or in the workplace. And so for me, it's been about finding times where I can be intensely focused and kind of go make the thing happen. And then making sure I take time in between that with my family or with the things that I enjoy doing. And so for much of the time that I've been building Aurora, I'm mostly, I worked only part-time on the weekends, right? And that was a time where I spent time with my kids and, getting in bike rides and doing stuff with my wife. And then there are times where if I go on vacation, like I am on vacation. But the idea that there's a perfect balance for all of us is a flawed, because and I think the other part of it is I actually really enjoy what I do. And I don't have a whole lot of other hobbies. I bike ride and I do a little bit of rock climbing. But this is my thing. And so finding that thing, if you can be lucky enough, like I feel like, it feels like I'm very fortunate to be in a position where the thing that I want to do is actually economically interesting and, rewarding over time.
Yeah. All right. And then now we're just going to transition into questions related to advice for students. So this is a cheesy question, but if you were to go back in time when you were just entering college, is there anything like specific you would change?
I would worry less about some of the decisions you make. So this is taking me a long time to realize, but there's decisions in life where you agonize A or B. And here's the kind of the cheat code for that. It turns out if you can't figure out how to, like, if those two choices are so similar, then it doesn't actually matter, right? You're gonna do A or B. You're smart people. You're at MIT. You've thought through this. Your ability to influence the outcome when it's that close, pick one of them. It's going to be okay, right? That would be like one bit of advice, is that there's a lot of things that we kind of build up in our mind, and again, some of these things where it's so difficult to choose, like at that point, flip a coin. It'll save you a lot of heartache. The other big thing that I've been practicing with our company right now is thinking about decisions as rubber balls or glass balls, right? That a rubber ball decision is one where you can make it And, like, do I want, chicken or beef for dinner tonight? Consequences of that are near zero. Worst case, if it orders and it's terrible, it comes out, I can probably order something else. But most likely I can just eat it. It'll be fine. I just maybe don't order it again next time. Versus, I don't know what's a big glass ball. As a company leader, should we acquire this company that's of significant size or not? Right? If you make that decision, it's going to have long and durable impact. And those are the ones that you want to make sure that you do get right. And then eventually, if it gets to a point where it's 50-50, then flip the coin and go. But so many times in life, I think engineers are particularly prone to this, by the way, that you can get into kind of a argument that takes longer than actually trying it out and finding out. And so just, ask yourselves, ask your teams, is this really a binding decision, or is this one that we can kind of change course quickly if we don't like the outcome? I think those are two things that I've learned relatively late in life that I wish I'd known earlier in life around decisions. Because that's where you get a lot of stress, right? There's a lot of life where you kind of just start going down a path and just go do that thing. But I find that the stressful times are when you have choices. And so being able to sift through what kind of choice you're making is super helpful.
And you seem to found like a career path that you really love. I guess like,
Oops.
what's your advice on like, students finding like a
Yeah.
career path or finding something that inspires them, I guess?
So I guess the first part of it would be recognize that that most career choices are rubber ball decisions, right? Should you take the job at Goldman Sachs or should you go and work at Google? It's going to be okay, right? You're going to spend a couple of years there and you might love it, or you might decide you hate it, but it's going to be okay. Right? And then you can go try something else. My career has been a little weird in that it has been relatively linear, in that I've kind of found a one thing and ran with it. And I really think that is just good fortune. At the time, it didn't feel like it, right? It felt like, when I went to Carnegie Mellon, I was like, I'm going to do Lego robots. And then I was going to do NASA stuff. Then I was going to be a professor. Then I'd go and try a defense contractor, and then I was a professor again. So it didn't feel quite so linear, but if you kind of step back from it, it's like I'm doing robot-y stuff, and then I'm going to go do self-driving car-y stuff, and kind of work. So I guess I would find something that you think is interesting. Don't be dumb about it, right? Like, if you're really excited about basket weaving, unless you're like one of the top 5 basket weavers on the planet, maybe don't think that's the career path. But it's going to be okay. Find something that you're excited about in the moment. And also, like, recognize at different points in life, the thing that matters to you is going to change, right? That there's a point in life where it may be the thing that matters is the prestige of the place that you work at. There's times in life where it may be about the money that you can make. It might be about the impact you can have in the world. It might be about the people you get to work with. And that's okay, right? There's a lot of stuff about, oh, you need to do the thing that's going to move the needle for the planet the most. Or, if you'd like to make more money, that's bad. Or, you should only go do things with your friends, right? Like, each of us is going to have different internal compasses as to what matters most to you in the moment. Align the thing that you're doing with that. And it's okay. And it will evolve over time.
All right,
Cool.
and then this is probably the final question from me, and then we'll open up to audience Q&A. But what would you say, like, what would your advice be for students that want to do like a leadership role? Like, do you think you did anything in college that helped you later on in your leadership roles?
Yeah. So I think communication is super important. I was a relatively good student. I enjoyed teaching things to other people. I have one of the things I think I'm good at is actually taking relatively complicated ideas and kind of helping people digest them. And so I, at this point in my career, look at everything and think it's a people problem. Right? It's, do I have the right people with the right skills? Do the people understand how to work together? Do the people understand what we're trying to do? It's almost always a people problem. And as a junior engineer, that's almost impossible to see. And this is one of those things that I've kind of evolved to understand. And so thinking about and putting energy into storytelling, communication, trust and relationship building. I think that that's underappreciated, particularly in a lot of the hard sciences. For me, I was part of student government at the University of Manitoba. I was the vice stick internal, which is like the vice president. I don't know why I stick it. I can't remember. I'm sure there was some University of Manitoba lore about it, but that just kind of having to put myself in situations where I was interacting with other people and learning from that, I think was really useful.
All right, thank you so much. We're just gonna open it up to audience Q&A. All right, you go.
Uh, I'm working in a self-driving car startup right now, and one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing right now is that a lot of the code base, which was built a few years back, the technology has grown so much in the last 7 years that the thing which was built like last year is now super outdated.
Yeah.
It's like the company first used ROS1 for
Yep.
you have to initialize all the nodes, you have to have a master, then you have all the communication
Yep.
paths and all of that stuff. And now we have ROS2, but because all the code is in ROS1, I have to go back and learn ROS1 again and
Yeah.
build upon. So how do you in the company manage these advancements? And like right now we have vision language models which are performing as good as CNNs.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
how do you transition?
Yeah,
Or if you transition?
I think we have been evolving constantly. I think one of the things to really think about is what matters. So, does it really matter to move from ROS1 to ROS2? I'm guessing it does because we use ROS1 because it's not hard real time or nowhere near real time, and so that's a problem for a car moving 60 miles an hour. I think one of the things that is often missed with some of the deep tech founders and startups is there's a core technology problem, which is very gnarly and complicated and deep. But to get a product, that's only 10% of what it takes to build actually a real product. And you can think about like the handful of people who Miami made the first iPhone prototype and the 1,000 people who it took to actually productionize it. And so the same is true here. And so I think having some concept, okay, clearly the computer vision technology has evolved dramatically over 7 years, but the message paradigm has not really changed. The driver to pull the data off of the LiDAR or the camera, the radar hasn't changed. And so having some perspective around like the part that matters to change and update versus the parts that are just, are necessary and kind of you can integrate the value over time is important.
Can I have a follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Sure.
So one follow-up on that is that the methodology itself has changed dramatically over past few years because
Yeah.
earlier we used to think more about LiDARs and the radar systems and
Yeah.
things like that rely on the sensors more.
Yeah.
And nowadays, given the Tesla is using
Yeah.
camera-only technology, people are, especially my company, is very much focused on trying to use only cameras
Yeah.
to figure things out. So when
No
when the
worries.
system themselves changes so dramatically,
Yeah.
how do you like change your work ethic? How do you do that?
Yeah, I do not believe Tesla's going to be successful with the approach they're taking. Right. I think that there's an awful lot of benefits to modern foundation models. It's important technology. But if we thought the right answer was to be doing camera only, we would be doing it because we have a lot of cameras, and we have a lot of data. And so I think that one of the things to be careful of is kind of following the fad of the moment. Right. Yeah, and this is the art in any kind of leadership is this a wave that I need to ride, or is this something that's going to, is important and I should pay attention to, but don't throw everything away around. And so we see the foundation model advances as an important wave, and it's something that we've been kind of building towards for many years now. But I think this notion that Elon says just use cameras, I think I just have a hard time buying that. So we've thought pretty hard about it, but good luck. Thank you. No worries. I meant that sincerely. It did not sound it, but I meant it. Sorry about that.
No, no worries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Please.
How important do you think it is for like autonomous vehicle companies to like kind of coordinate like a paradigm for like communication between vehicles? Is that like something that you guys are working on trying to establish now with the other like big up and comers in the field?
No, we're not. And that feels like a few years from now problem. Not a right now problem because it's just not enough density of them. Each of us, I expect, are using some kind of internal, we call it fleet intelligence. So we share information between our vehicles. I'm confident that the Waymo folks share information between their vehicles. At some point, our two fleets may be operating in similar places, and then maybe it's worth a conversation. But right now we aren't. The Department of Transportation for the last 20 years, sadly, has been trying to push a digital short-range communication standard, which would allow vehicles to communicate kind of near-term hazards. But that really hasn't gotten off the ground.
What about with, sorry, can I?
No, go ahead.
Please.
You think about like like communicating with infrastructure, like traffic lights and stuff like that.
Yeah, again, could be valuable, but the problem is, this is kind of a business model / practical challenge with it, in that the ownership of traffic lights is incredibly distributed, and it's distributed to people who don't have a lot of money. And so for them to update the infrastructure to support this is kind of tricky. And so our approach, and my belief, the right way to do this is to deliver the technology where the world is today. So don't expect anything from the world. And then as you start to see benefits from it, then engage with society about, okay, this be worth it. And I think that the best metaphor for me of this is, we didn't go build the freeway network and then make the cars. We made the cars and they were driving down the horse tracks and like, this is crappy and bumpy and I get stuck in the mud. We should probably pave this. And that will enable interstate commerce and whatever. And so I think that that's what will happen here is over time, we will see more smart infrastructure. We'll see more, kind of virtualization of communication or signaling. But I think that's a few years out still. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So earlier you mentioned that you should do something that not only that you're good at, but you're also competitively good at, meaning that you're top 10, top 15, top 1%. How did you go about finding that? Also juggling what you're also interested in as well?
I said slightly different, which was you should find something that you're good at that you enjoy, and then don't do something that is not obvious that you can make a career out of, unless you have, like, if you were the best at anything, you're going to be able to have a career and find satisfaction, happiness, and perhaps basketball was a bad example. I apologize for any professional basketballers, but I don't believe that that success is innate. Right, that you earn success through hard work, through insight. There's certainly, elements of nature that contribute to it, and elements of kind of initial conditions and what have you. But I would find the thing that you're excited at, and then work to be good at it, work to be the best at it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, to sort of piggyback off of that, what advice would you have for, I guess, early career professionals, like when you found your first or second job in industry? How would you go about finding what makes you tick and how to figure out the balance between sort of passion projects after work or switching careers? Like, what have you seen has worked for your fellow colleagues or people around you?
Yeah. I think that. So one is figuring out what matters at the organization. right? Is this an organization where it's about who can, say the nicest thing to the boss? Or is this an organization where they're going to recognize, contribution and impact, right? And I would try and steer clear of the first, and I would try and find organizations like the second. And then we talk about confidence and humility, right? In that you should have confidence in your ability. You should, express your perspective. You should go do the work the way that you know how. But at the same time, have the humility to realize that if you're the new hire at the company may be doing something that you think is stupid. You should probably say that because, like I said, sometimes you just get inured to these things and you kind of the company doesn't notice. But other times it's because of secondary and tertiary reasons that you may not be aware of. And so ask the question. I ask a lot of questions. And I think sometimes executives want to feel like they're projecting, they know everything and that's, you don't need to explain it. I think that's a lost opportunity. And again, if you're in an organization where you don't feel like you can ask questions, it's probably not a healthy organization. So be curious, bring some drive, and then see, does it feel good, right? Do you feel like you enjoy working with people? Do you feel like the thing that you're doing, tickles something for you one way or the other? When I talk about leadership and people joining a company, I say there's three things: that you need to have a mission that matters. You need to work with good people and kind of have a job that you enjoy. And then you need to be paid enough that it feels fair, that you're not embarrassed. And the first matters because it doesn't matter how good or how much you like the job. There's going to be days that suck. And so, or how important the mission is, it's going to be days that suck. So, having good people around you to kind of get you through that matters. And then the second one, sorry, I'm a little off my game today. Having a mission that matters is important because yes, some days will suck. So you need that. Having a job that you enjoy and doing work that you like and people around you, because if the mission is something that matters, but you're stuck doing a thing you hate, you're not going to be able to put it out, right? At some point, you're going to get burnt out and it's time to go leave. And then, of course, everyone should get paid in a way that feels fair. And so if you get those three things, like that's the place you want to be. I think I saw one more at the back somewhere.
I think you raised your hand for that.
We feel the importance of your work in autonomous vehicles is over other solutions that might also make transportation safer and more efficient.
Yeah, I would love to see all of them happen. This just happens to be the one that I'm good at. And that I've kind of picked up to work on, right? And I think we should be improving driver assistance technology. I think we should be doing work in designing better roadways with better separation. I think we should be finding ways to improve the viability of public transportation. And like, there's lots of different ways we can improve cities and transportation, making cities like changing zoning laws so that cities are more kind of European in that you are closer to work and can walk more. Those are all important things. Automated vehicles is the thing that has been my mission. And that I think can have a huge impact. And it's the one where I believe we align a number of societal benefits with economic benefits. And that's a good way to have an impact, is if you can make the world better and people can make money with it, then that will actually get traction.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about how do you feel and what's your response to or competition overseas? Like let's say I know Chinese startup companies with autonomous features.
Yeah. I think unfortunately that the macro political environment means that we're not going to go compete in China and they're not going to come compete in the US anytime soon. Right. And if you'd asked me eight or 9 years ago, I was much more bullish about US-Chinese relations. And at this point, I just don't even, I almost literally do not read anything about what's happening in China in the space because it doesn't matter to me. which is sad. And I think the Europeans, there's only really one player in Europe, and that's Wave. And we'll see. It's young. We'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, what would you say is Aurora's differentiating factor over other similar companies like Waymo? or
Yeah.
Cruise and
Yeah, so we're doing trucks and Waymo Cruise are not. And we think that that matters. So if I take a step back, I think, one, the fact that we're independent, I think means a lot because we've been able to adapt to what we think is the right technological solution, what we think is the right business model in ways that others may not have been able to. I think technologically, we have this really interesting first light LiDAR technology, which allows us to see twice as far as we think others can, which is pretty important, particularly at freeway speeds. But then we've been talking about a lot of the concepts that have made large language models successful since about 2018. And so we've been baking a lot of that into the way we've approached solving this problem. So there's some really interesting, we think about how do you not just get the benefits of these foundation type models, but also how do you bound their behavior, what we call putting guardrails around them, so that we can constrain that to and enforce certain kinds of rules we want. And I think that's actually very powerful and important. So that's some technological things. I think from the people we have are exceptional. I take them pound for pound against anyone. Right, and we're about 1,800 people, and so compared to some of our competitors, some of the startups, like I just don't know how they're going to be able to be competitive. Just the amount of work we can get done is kind of ridiculous. And then we have really had a model of partnership. And so today we work with Volvo and Packard. They make about half the trucks on the US market. We work with FedEx, Werner, Schneider, Hirschbach, Uber Freight. These are some of the biggest transport carrier companies in the United States, trucking companies in the US. We have a partnership with Continental to make our hardware for us, which is one of the world's leading tier one, the folks who make the parts for cars and trucks. And so that ecosystem we've built around the company, I think is bar none the best. And then when we look at the business model, we see trucking as a much better entry point for automated vehicles than ride hailing. And there's a few reasons for that. So one is that it's a trillion with a T, $1 trillion market today, versus ride hailing is a 45 to 60 to $80 billion market. And the way that ride hailing market will grow is through change of consumer behavior. Whereas the way we impact the trucking market is we have them do the same thing they've been doing, just better. And so that's better. Trucking is a total cost of ownership business, a TCO business. So said simply, a trucking company cares that it gets there safely and that it gets there at a price that's competitive and it gets there on time. Whereas if I get in an Uber, there's a lot of emotions I have, about are we going the right way? I would have taken that road. If it cuts me in front of a truck, did it cut way too late? And so it's terrifying, or did it, sit there and wait forever? And I would have gone through that gap and now I'm frustrated. So there's a lot more emotions involved. And then just from a unit economic basis, the value of moving a truck is 3 times greater than the value of moving a car. And so when you think about bringing a business to market, being able to make more money with each product is really powerful because you can have something that's a little more expensive and still make money. So there's a whole bunch of reasons we think that Aurora's positioned well to go there.
Do you think it's better to start a company in your 20s or 40s? Like gain all the experience in your 20s or start it?
I don't have a strong opinion. I think you should do it when you feel like you've got the energy to take it. I think that there are absolutely mistakes that I have made in the career and the way I've operated and led people and whatnot that I have learned from, and that I'm not paying for it anymore, which is a win. And I think there's a variety of kind of maturity and experience and the network that I had and all of that that's helped us build Aurora in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do in my 20s. But I had more energy in my 20s, right? And And so, I think there's no right answer. And it probably depends on the kind of business you're building. Right? If you're building a new consumer app, then maybe it doesn't matter so much that you don't have a broad network of connections in the automotive industry. If you're going to build something that impacts the automotive industry, it's like, where there's a lot of depth there, then maybe there's some value there. So it really is going to depend on you and depend on what you're trying to go do.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that question, for you said the answer depends upon different industry, but how would, as a 20-year-old, will get a knowledge of which industry needs what kind of depth?
Yeah, I didn't say I had an obvious, easy answer. But I think one of the things that people do poorly when they start a company is they keep it a secret. Right, and they're like, oh, my idea is precious, and so I'm not going to talk about it with anyone. So here's the thing. If by telling someone your idea, they can beat you doing that, you didn't have that good an idea. Right, there wasn't a good reason to build that company. And so what I'd suggest is that go out and talk to people, talk to venture capitalists, talk to your friends, talk to other founders, and learn. Right, and don't be stupid. If they're truly like, if you have discovered, this magic quantum effect that allows teleportation, okay, I understand that. But if it's like, hey, I'm gonna make this little tweak to this thing over here, and like, hey, that's not gonna win. There's more to what's gonna make actually a business successful. So flesh it out. Most people that are building a company, most people, and not all, most, recognize this is a hard thing to do and kind of see other people on that journey with them, and I like want to help out, right? And want to be a sounding board because they're busy doing their thing. That's not your thing.
So something I'm kind of curious about is kind of how you like decided to work specifically on like right, like a like self-driving as opposed to just like self-driving cars and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I imagine you have to find some sort of like need in the market that like hasn't been addressed. So how do you actually find that need? Like how do you know, oh actually I just realized, we've done this in cars, we're not for trucks.
Yeah. So the heart of it is being curious, right? And the way we got there is not the way I would recommend most people get there, right? So I kind of got there through this is a technology, it's kind of cool. And then it turned into a business over time. It is much better if you personally understand this is a problem. And then, okay, how can I solve this problem? Maybe it's process, maybe it's technology, maybe it's something else. Rather than, hey, I wrote this math down, let me go figure something to do with it. That's normally a recipe for disaster. In our case, I had spent time at the university and then at Google. And so throughout that time, I was learning and curious and trying to understand what was happening. And so when we started Aurora, we actually started on light vehicles. We started with the vision that we'd make a driver for all vehicles, but we started with light vehicles, cars, for a few reasons. So one is cars are just easier. You don't need a special driver's license. They're smaller. They drive at lower speeds in the city. Like there's lots of reasons that they were easier to operate. But we also had a technological insight, which was the sensing technology to allow you to drive a truck at freeway speeds did not exist. And we're like, that means trucking seems like a good business, seems like an important place, but we just don't see how you solve it without solving this ability to look far down the road. And that was part of the experience I got from working at Google, was like, this was one of the limitations we had. And so then we spent about 2 years trying to find a way to solve that problem. We ended up acquiring a company in Montana, this company called Blackmore, that had a magic kind of LiDAR that allowed us to see far enough. And then we've been building on that. So for us, it was a lot of experience, a lot of curiosity over many years. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually the application that matters most. So.
Okay, one quick question.
Sorry.
How do you address the ethical concerns with autonomous vehicles? So I know that people are concerned about jobs being taken away
Yeah.
or what if an autonomous vehicle crashes into a person?
Yep.
And also with trucks, the damage cost would probably be a lot more than with a small car.
So there's two, let's divide those into two separate things. So one is about how do you manage the safety risk appropriately and how do you deal with that? And then the other is about the question of how does technology influence society and impact it? So on the safety side of it, this is one of the things that we have focused on from day one, and that mission that I mentioned earlier, to deliver the benefits of self-driving technology safely, quickly, and broadly. On the surface that, like I could have said those in any order, but we actually put safely first very intentionally. And it's part of our decision-making process of the company. Normally, like people actually use those three words in that order is, okay, can we do this safely? Okay, we're doing it safely. Let's move as quickly as we can. And then, from there, go and do things broadly. And so we have put a lot of effort into how do we understand the risks, and then how do we do the engineering work to mitigate those risks? And it's why there aren't self-driving trucks on the road today. I tell people that you give me 6 months to 3 graduate students, I'll get you a self-driving car. You just don't want to ride in it anymore, right? We can drive around a parking lot and hopefully not hit too many things. But to actually do the work, to have confidence that, I've had my kids on the road around it, I have my parents on the road around it. There's just a lot of that not sexy, rigorous engineering validation that has to go into it. So we put a lot of effort into doing that well, and to minimize that risk. But also recognizing that the status quo is not, nobody gets hit by a car. It's that 42,000 Americans die every year, and 1.25 million people die globally. And so, we have an opportunity to drive that down, and technology can have that answer. To the second half of the question around kind of the ethical implications of this and what about job loss, I think that the most important part is to approach it with empathy, right? That I am incredibly appreciative that people are willing to drive trucks. Our society would just stop if we did not have people driving trucks today. The challenge is that people don't want to drive trucks. Over the next decade, the American Trucking Association expects we will need 1 million new people to drive trucks, and we just don't know where we're going to find them. Today, we're short about 60,000 truck drivers. And so my expectation is that if you are a truck driver today and you choose to retire as a truck driver, you will be able to, because there's just so much demand for us to move goods through the US. At the same time, it's a job where people spend days, if not weeks, away from home. Like I said earlier, they're 10 times as likely to die on the job. The physical toll of doing the job is hard, and it's tough on people. And we have a lot of problems with it. And so to me, I sleep pretty well at night, understanding that this is actually a good thing for society, while also appreciating that I expect there will be people who will be displaced, even though they would have the opportunity, I think, to drive throughout their careers. And that's tough. We can do our part, and then we work with others in the legislative branch and, with our customers to talk about, how can we help them? Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you want to tell them about the swag and stuff.
Yeah, there's some t-shirts on the chair on the side over there. There's 3 sizes, I think, medium, large, and extra large. I got a small box of things. I couldn't bring too much. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. I'm not.
One more question.
Sure.
This one is also a little technical. I
Sure.
wanted to ask about the simulation technology.
Yeah.
Because, again, moving from years, there a lot of development, and right now GANs are really hot topic. And what is the learning simulation?
I can
So,
understand.
do you at your company work with simulation, or do you prefer
No,
on-road?
we've talked
So
for
you
many
just-
years.